It's first. Yes, it is now. Vice Chair Scavdall, I'm sitting in for Chair Mulduller tonight. He's home with his family. They are dealing with some medical issues, but he tells me everybody's doing well, and they're spending some recovery time together, so we wish them well. This is my first time chairing a meeting, so I'm going to ask for your patience and understanding if we stumble through a little bit, but don't be shy. If you see me do something a little bit out of step or out of order, or if I need some help, don't be shy. Help me out here a little bit. Also point out that for those of you that are on Zoom, you can access the meeting on Zoom. You can also call in. If you want to raise your hand, please press *9. Instructions are at the top of the agenda for how to make public comment during the meeting. So with that, let's have a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we have roll call, please?
Ivor Scavdall,
Here.
Commissioner Noah Levy,
Here.
Commissioner Thomas Mulder, Commissioner Peggy O'Neill,
Here.
Commissioner Sarah West, Commissioner Jerome Curiozzi,
Here.
Commissioner Lorna McFarland.
Here.
Thank you. Director Ford, do we have any agenda modifications?
We only have one modification, and that will be that we're going to ask that item number E8, Mike's Farm, be removed from the consent calendar. We are going to renotice that for the July 18th meeting. There were a couple of items left out of the project description. We felt that those were significant enough that it deserved to be renoticed.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we take public comment on non-agenda items on matters pertinent to the Commission's jurisdiction, but that are not on this evening's agenda. Would anybody from the floor like to address the Commission this evening? Seeing none, I'll ask if any of the attendees on Zoom would like to address. Please raise your hand or hit *9. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. So we'll move to the consent calendar. These matters are usually approved by a single vote, but I will poll the audience and the Commission to determine if any item on the consent agenda should be pulled for public comment or further discussion this evening. And we have 8 items on consent. So item 1 is review and approval of our April 4th meeting action summary. Anybody from the Commission? No. Public? Seeing none. Item 2, review and approve the April 18th action summary. Commissioners? And the public? Seeing none. It stays on. We have Keck Moeller Coastal Development Permit. This is to be noticed and continued to the July 18th Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners? All good? Public? Seeing none and no hands raised on Zoom. Item 4, RPL Investors, Coastal Development Permit, Conditional Use Permit, and Special Permit. Commissioners? All good? Public and Zoom, I see no hands. Item 5, Cottrell Ranch LLC zone reclassification.
I do have a question about taxes, how they work in that area, so I'd like to pull that for a brief discussion.
Okay, we'll pull that item. Item 6, well, excuse me, I guess we'll pull it, so I don't need to check with the public on that, since we're already pulling it, okay? Item 6, Eel River Family Farms conditional use permit. Commissioners? From the floor and Zoom, I see no comments or no hands raised, so that'll stay on. Item 7 is Scott Roberts conditional use permit. Commissioners? Mr. Kurasi?
I don't know if this requires polling. I just wanted to note that there is an incorrect date on the resolution text. If that needs polling, then we can.
Can we correct that administratively?
We can correct that administratively.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching that. And public or Zoom, all good? You're going to win the bid. And then item 8, Director Ford has asked that we remove that. So that's all of the consent items. Do we have a motion?
I would move that we approve or move forward items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 from the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And we have a motion from Commissioner Levy and a second from Commissioner Kurasi. We'll go with a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Through the consent item, we have a public hearing, and then we'll take up the Cottrell matter following the public hearing on Heritage Farm.
Chair, you could certainly do that, but you also do have the prerogative, since there seems to be just a minor question on the Cottrell Ranch and a continuance on the other one, maybe it would be easier to dispense with those first.
And that'd be if the fellow commissioners are all right with that? Okay.
So the first would be Cottrell Ranch?
Yes. Cottrell's, I believe. Yes. And question for staff?
So my question to staff was more of a general question, but when any land is converted to timber harvest or timber production zone, as I understand it, it's a significant tax break. So I'm just wondering, like, are there, and again, not necessarily in this case, but are there follow-up efforts or enforcement to ensure that the land is being used for timber or and isn't just being converted for the tax break?
Well, it has to be obviously capable of supporting a certain yield of timber, and there is a tax break. And then if the property is used for something other than activities that are consistent with harvesting timber, that would be a violation of the zone. So if you're asking, do we constantly go out and survey and look for violations of that? No, we don't. But where we become aware of violations, would we respond to that? Yes, we would.
And then on the flip side, we don't actively monitor that they are producing the timber?
We don't require them to harvest at certain intervals, no.
Okay.
I mean, and there's a lot to that. From a habitat perspective,
Yeah.
you know, allowing trees to mature, grow into older growth, even older second growth forest has habitat value. It has carbon sequestration value. There's a lot of value there, just holding it in timberland.
Gotcha. So are there, now I'm just kind of curious, when land is brought forward to be zoned this way, is there any sort of economic analysis on the reduction in taxes? Does the county have a cap essentially, or is that?
We
not
don't
really
have a
relevant?
cap, we don't have a limit. There's not an economic analysis that's done for the county, because this is viewed as an incentive to hold land in timberland.
Gotcha.
It's something that is desired.
Okay. Oh, thanks.
Follow-up question on that, though. Land that's been historically used as timberlands, which these are, even though it was maybe zoned agricultural, we're not refunding taxes back that were paid in the past.
That
for
is
those.
correct.
All right, to be clear.
You're right.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could add one more thing in, and then the other thing that can't happen is you can't just suddenly decide, oh, I don't want to do TPZ anymore, so now I'm going to change it to something else and not have consequences. If somebody wants to do that, there's either a rollout period or a huge tax consequence to change it out.
So have we satisfied your,
Yes, I just wasn't sure. Staff indicated they were going to talk. I wasn't sure.
well, I'm assuming we're waiving the staff report on this matter,
Right.
since we were just trying to get a question related to taxation. Do you want, if the commission would like a full staff report, we can go to there, but I assume we were waiving that.
That was the only question, right? Can we just do a consent on it now?
Yes, we
You can do a motion, yes.
Should we make sure there's no public comment on this since we have pulled it?
That's a good question. And I don't see, we can open
should-
for public comment?
You should ask the question, yes.
Okay. Would anybody from the public wish to speak to address this item? Is the applicant here? Okay. Anybody on Zoom? Okay, I don't see any questions from the public.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So call for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve it by consent.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Neill's made a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and we have a second. Go by voice vote?
And I'll
Oh,
I'll
excuse me.
just say I appreciate you asking the question, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none? Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the public hearings on the agenda, and we have Humboldt Heritage Farm Management.
Before we get there, could we continue Mike's Ranch?
Oh, I thought sure.
Sorry, need a vote on that.
Oh, we need a vote to continue that?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then input from anybody who wants to speak to the
Okay.
continuance.
All right, so we'll take up items eight. Mike's Farm LLC, conditional use permit. That's going to be continued to a date uncertain, or do we,
You can say July 18th.
to July 18th? So, if people can't be here for July 18th, we take comments now.
We will.
Otherwise,
Yep.
just comments related to the continuance.
Right.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we continue it. Is that?
I want to, just let me check with the public to see if anybody has any comments or any questions on the continuance of Mike Farm LLC, or if you cannot be here on July 18th and you were expected to speak this evening, you could speak this evening. And I see nobody in the audience, and I do not see any hands up on Zoom. Commissioner?
Yeah, question to staff. I'm curious, can I ask what the items that were left off were? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, that's fine. The propagation area was not included in the project description. There are some solar panels that, and unfortunately that is shown on the site plan, but it was not included in the project description. It was not included in the legal notice or on the agenda. There are some solar panels that are being proposed that were not in the project description.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill?
You ready?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to extend Mike's Farm till, was it July
July 18th.
18th?
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner O'Neill,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Levy. Any questions on the motion? Call for voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Now we'll move to item F on the agenda, public hearings. And we have the Humboldt Heritage Farm Management LLC, special permit, zoning clearance certificates, and conditional use permit. Report from staff.
Hi, this is Rodney, Senior Planner. I'll be presenting this project this evening once I get the screen share up and running. I did it. All right, this project is, the applicant is Humboldt Heritage Farm Management LLC. They're proposing special permits, zoning clearance certificates, and conditional use permits in the Alder Point area. The project is located just south of the little community of Alder Point there. You see the push pin. The project includes a special permit for 10,000 square feet of existing mixed-light cannabis cultivation, 2 zoning clearance certificates that total 38,940 square feet of mixed-light cannabis cultivation that are being brought to the site through the RRR program, a special permit for 33,560 square feet of new mixed-light cannabis cultivation, and there'll be 8,000 square feet of propagation space to support the on-site cultivation operations I just discussed. Also included in the project is a conditional use permit for an 8,000 square foot commercial nursery to provide plant starts for other cannabis operations in the area. Water is sourced from a well and rain catchment. The annual water use is estimated at 1.2 million gallons, which is about 12.2 gallons per square foot per year. Existing and proposed on-site water storage will total 837,556 gallons. I said that wrong. 837,556 gallons. Drying and processing will occur on site. Power is supplied by solar and an emergency backup generator, and future power will be brought in by PG&E, and solar will remain. No mixed light cultivation will occur until PG&E becomes available for the project. The project includes a 2-story, 4,800 square foot employee bunkhouse, and operations will require 6 employees. This is a closer look at the project site here, as it is today. This is the site plan that's proposed. I'll get my laser pointer going here. Cultivation areas and propagation space are located in these areas here. Solar panels here. Processing and drying occurring here. There's some storage containers here. Water tanks are scattered throughout, with the largest water tank being in this location here. And the employee bunkhouse is proposed here. Staff's recommending that the commission has considered the adopted EIR for the CCLUO and has considered the addendum to the EIR prepared for this project, and to make all required findings for approval of the project and adopt a resolution approving the project subject to the recommended conditions of approval. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Just a quick one. Through the chair, thanks so much for your presentation, Mr. Yandell. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss any public comment. I didn't see any, and you didn't mention any. So
Nope. No public comment whatsoever on this.
Okay, thanks.
Please.
Yeah, I had the same question. Following up on that, I'm assuming a notice was put out to residents of Alder Point. Thanks.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Does the applicant wish to speak on the project? How do we do this? Have 10 minutes? Okay, and you have 10 minutes
10.
to make a presentation.
I'm sure will be very brief. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present what we find is a very exciting project for Alder Point. It's been with great determination and dedication that the applicant, Nocona Mendez, brings this before the commission tonight. My name is Suzanne Mays. I'm with Margot Advisors. We began working with Mr. Mendez and his team January 2023, at which time the engineering cannabis company he was working for closed their doors, so they came to ours. So our company cannot claim, credit for most of the work that was prepped. As you see from your packets, it is very extensive reporting. There were no less than 10 expert compliance and/or engineering environmental companies involved with the preparation of the documentation. And it's a credit to our planning department. Mr. Director Ford has met with the applicant more than once, has had an open door for this project. Rodney was incredible to work with, developing the staff report. It's no easy feat to prepare such a detailed, robust staff report. So thank you, Rodney. Thank you for the very concise report. This is a complicated project, made look easy because of the work that's been done to present. It's gone through 2 RRR, retirement, remediation, and relocation properties. That means they took it from an inferior, environmentally inferior location, and they put it to a superior environmental location. And then they had to go back and remediate fully back to original state, the other 2 properties where they transferred the square footage. So like I said, it looks easy, everything's very clean and done. Amazingly, this project is shovel ready if it gets approved tonight. I can't say enough just about having stepped in a year ago on this project, a year and a half ago, how it's been wonderful working to get this in front of you. So I believe you'll find it a very complete application, and we're really only going to make one comment, but before I get there, I would like to introduce you to the applicant. He was raised in Redway. He's a local boy. He attended South Fork High School. He's community-minded and very well-liked. Nocona is a family man, father of 2, partner to his wife of 13 years. He's very humble, and he's very understated. He's been a very big surprise to us. We have loved working with him and his team. And for the industry, those 2 combinations are not easily identified with people working in the cannabis industry. So it's been a pleasure. He currently has 7 active licenses in Humboldt County, cultivation licenses specifically. He retains his employees, which is a credit to anybody in cannabis or not. He has employees that have been with him since legalization started. When writing this, I actually met with them earlier in the week, and I asked him, what would you like me to tell the commission about you? And without hesitation, he simply said in his style, I've never been late on a payment. Right? Isn't that the kind of cannabis farmers you want working in Alder Point on a 2-acre farm? So anyway, and I can confirm this. We as his compliance company, we check all bills, all reporting. If he owes taxes, if he owes a water report, we know it. And they are crystal clean with everything. So it is a pleasure. Multiple LSA agreements he is good working through, multiple water board enrollments, Department of Cannabis Control, all the agencies, he's compliant and ready to continue. My personal experience working with Tacona the last 18 months, I found him very easy to work with. He shows up on time and he's well prepared. He's thorough. There's no detail too small for him to consider. And while he comes across as being very laid back, I can tell you he's very astute when it comes to running his businesses. I would be remiss if I didn't say that his staff, working with his staff, rocks. And I don't say that about most phone calls that come in. But when his staff call, it's always a pleasure. They're always well-informed, on the ball, ahead of the game. So he has the skill set and the experience to be very successful in developing this project. So at this time, I do want to call your attention to conditions of approval. Page 2, item 15, which we would like the commission to review specifically. Public Works is asking for a turnout to be constructed in an area of the road which is not located near the property or touches the property. And it's not under the ownership of the applicant, the area that he's being asked to improve. So we're just asking if you folks could maybe look at that. The applicant is a little bit concerned that if it goes into his conditions, he's held responsible and he may not even have the legal right to do that work. So it's a little bit of a concern. So we would like to ask the commission to reconsider this and remove it, or certainly look at it and help us to understand how we would move forward. So we're here for questions. Pardon me? It was page 2 of your conditions of approval, item 15. Yes. A15 is what it is, okay. And then also on page 8 of the top presentation, the actual staff report, page 8, midway through the first paragraph, it kind of has a comment made by one of the Public Works staff, which I believe kind of triggered the condition, and even that's a little bit vague, so we just need clarification and or it to be stricken. Okay? And as I said, if you have any questions for us, we're available, and we really do appreciate your time and opportunity.
Thank you. We'll give you an opportunity at the end if there's any comments we need you to address or provide a rebuttal. Thank you.
Certainly. Okay.
Now open to members of the public. If anybody attending this evening would like to speak on the project, please approach the podium. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, my name's Katie Kabala. I've had the privilege of working for Nacona and Humboldt Heritage Farm Management since its formation. My role currently is the office manager, which entails accounts payable, accounts receivable, HR, business operations, and compliance. Nacona's goal from the beginning on how he would operate his business has been clear: to consciously surround himself with professionals to guide himself in compliance, understand rules and regulations, ensuring that he was participating at the highest expectations. I'm very proud today of the excellent standing relationships Nacona has within the county, the DCC, and the various agencies we adhere to within this industry. Nacona has been a model land steward. It is truly ingrained in him. He's been living on rural properties his entire life. There hasn't been an inspection where the DCC hasn't pointed out to us how clean the properties are and what a nice pleasure that is to see. I have personally learned about land stewardship through him and his dedication to the team on how to respect the land and the watersheds that we get to work within. Humboldt Heritage Farm Management and Nacona personally are well known to be an excellent employer. I am just one of several employees who's worked for Nacona for years. He has maintained outstanding retention of talented coworkers, and we're excited for the opportunities that this expansion could further, give employers or employees, within the expansion. I've been given the opportunity to be engaged in this project. And over the past 6 years, Nakona and our respective team have not left any stone unturned in seeing this project through. It's been a lot of reports and expertise and back and forth at the county to really get this right. Just thankful to have watched this vision of Nakona has become reality here tonight, and appreciate your considerations. It's been really hard-earned. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
My name's Shannon Taliaferro. I'm a CEO of the Green Ox, just down the street from this building. I've been working with Nakona and his team for many years, and we really rely on folks like himself and his team to support our company. And I would ask you to move forward with this permit. Thank you for your time.
Would anybody else like to speak this evening? I'm checking on Zoom. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. Unless the applicant wants to come, well, maybe we'll go to the staff with the question about the road. So I close the public hearing now? Okay. Public comment. Okay. Public comment is closed. And Rodney, do you want to address the comment about
Yes.
condition?
I do.
Item 15, please.
Yes, I do. I want to start at the second question because it kind of sets the stage. This project was currently being stewarded along by my ex-office mate, Desmond, who I actually miss, but anyways. He had this project, and he was working through the issue of access. And at one point, in August of 2023, he had a sit-down with Ken Freed from our Public Works Department. And Ken Freed relayed to him that he was okay with the project, but he certainly wanted it to comply to fire-safe regulations. And he was specific to say if there was just a turnout on Highland/Steelhead Road, it has two names depending on what information you look at, halfway between 6th and the project site, that he'd be okay with it. So I put the condition in there. I'm sitting here right now looking at Google Earth, and I'm on that street, on Street View, and I found 2 natural turnouts that are already in existence that don't even need to be made. And the turnouts are there, so when the fire trucks are coming in and out, right, and there's a car there, they need to be able to back up and get out of the way or move forward and get out of the way. And I can see that there's areas along this road right now in existence that would already accommodate that. So I think that probably answers the question.
So is your recommendation to go ahead and remove that condition?
Based on what I'm seeing here, my recommendation is to remove the condition. There's actually an area, a utility area here. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's not a residence, but it's got a huge turnout area and a cyclone fence around it. And it's just naturally sitting there right about in the position that Public Works would have wanted the turnout. And then there's another large driveway down the way that's wide open with no fencing, and it could possibly be used just to get out of the way of a fire truck. If that satisfies the
Okay,
commission.
thank you. Commissioners, any questions of staff?
After Commissioner Kuriazi.
Just to clarify, does it matter the ownership of the land where those turnouts exist?
I don't believe it does. My mic's not on. I don't believe it does.
I concur with that.
Commissioner Levy?
Thank you. I'm satisfied about, to take your recommendation. We can get to that when we make a motion, but I did have a couple of other pretty simple questions. One is, I just wanted to be clear about the power supply. Obviously, this degree of mixed light cultivation requires a fair amount of power. I understand the applicant is seeking PG&E hookup, but that hasn't occurred yet. I was just a little bit unclear, and I know there is a large diesel generator, which was, the staff report said would only be used for the previously permitted cultivation.
Right.
But as of now, is the solar array already in place, or is that planned to be installed prior to the new cultivation?
I don't have the site plan up, but I believe that it is proposed as part of the project. And the project, in the project description from the applicant, they do not want to do mixed light until they acquire the PG&E drop and purchase the renewable RE power through PG&E.
I see.
So
Okay, sorry.
it'll be light dep until PG&E is obtained. If it's never obtained, it will remain light dep.
Thank you, that's clarifying.
Okay.
I have a question. How close is PG&E to the property?
The PG&E power lines do run down and serve other parcels down the road, and they serve the county dump that's about 300 feet from his property. I believe it would be, I don't know, I've never been there, and I hate to say that, I should have went there, but it's not like there's not PG&E on the surrounding parcels.
Yes.
I have a question to staff regarding on the resolution, finding 5, item H. This has to do with the setback from neighboring property regarding allowing residential development on the neighboring property.
Yes.
It says finding 5, item H, and I was wondering if you could clarify that the setback is designed to allow the neighboring property to put residential.
Yeah, I'll describe that. There's a setback requirement to be 300 feet from a neighboring residence on an adjacent parcel. The 270-foot setback was put in place to allow someone to put a house on a neighboring parcel that wasn't there and meet the fire-safe setbacks and maintain a 300-foot setback from something they might find offensive. Staff looked into the parcel in question, and we feel strongly that it's undevelopable because of slope. There's SMAs all over the place. There's a railroad running through it. It just doesn't look feasible. And then I looked further into it, and the property owner who owns that very steep parcel, they own a parcel to the south, which may be part of the legal parcel. I couldn't get creation documentation for it, but they own a large parcel to the south where their homestead is and all their accessory dwelling units. So that family group already has an established home site on their property. And I actually have a slide that shows what that parcel looks like and the slope and the railroad and all the stuff on it. If you'd really like to see it, it's an extra bonus slide.
Well, if you put it that way. I'm comfortable with your explanation. I appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you.
What's an SMA?
Streamside management area.
Any other questions of staff?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, so this, I do have a question again about the staff report that I'm hoping you can clarify. I guess the first one is, so water use, I understand the total water budget is expected to be on the order of 1.2 million gallons?
Yes.
I think you say at the start of the staff report, and it sounds like the majority of that, or at least about half of that, will be from, no, more than half. I think it said 750,000 plus gallons will be from a rainwater catchment tank.
Well, the rainwater catchment tank holds 755,000,
Yes, and then some
Gallons.
additional tanks.
and there's additional tanks. We looked at how much rainwater that would capture. it could capture anywhere between 250,000 on up well over 300,000, depending on the rain year. If they want to route water from the surfaces of structures, they can route it into the tank. But the tank has a really massive rainwater catchment surface. So my opinion is that the bulk of the water to fill the tank would likely come from the well in the rainy season, in the winter,
Okay,
and then some rainwater catchment.
so we're talking about maybe a quarter or so of the water at most would come from rainwater catchment,
Yeah.
and the rest would be,
quarter to 30%,
oh, okay.
yeah.
Because then I am getting to the question about condition of approval A25, but that seems to arise from the notes in the staff report about the CDFW site visit last October.
Yes.
And it has in the last bullet point, the project description states that the applicant is proposing to use approximately 1.5 million gallons of irrigation water annually, sourced from an existing permitted well. So just want to be clear, is it actually estimated that they will use 1.5 million, or is the total estimate really 1.2 and they were just sort of overstating that?
What you're seeing there was the project description at the time of the site visit.
Got it. Okay, so now it's been scaled down a bit.
Yes, sir.
To 1.2 million expected, and it's not all expected to come from the well, but they're correct in that the majority of it, 3/4 or 70%, would be from the well.
That's correct.
I see. And so now, and then getting to the question of that condition, they I assume were aware of the Lindbergh well connectivity report that had come out a year before that, which perhaps was not, while it was addressing the question of hydrological connectivity to surface waters, perhaps their concern was that it doesn't do enough to demonstrate the potential yield of the well to generate this much water, and that's why they've requested this additional hydrologist assessment to occur?
Yeah, and I struggled with that myself. It seems as if Mr. Lindbergh, put that in there because he only knew what the well was producing at this certain point in time. And he had no way of understanding what it would look like in the future. And CDFW wanted us to make sure that we put condition number 25 in to accommodate that uncertainty that was brought forward by Mr. Lindbergh.
Sure. And I assume that was, expressed to the applicant and they understand.
They have read the staff report and the conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the commissioners? At this point, applicant can come back, or?
You can, but you technically close public
I
comment.
know. Because you asked me to.
But, I think, if I may, that even though public comment has been closed, if a question arises that the staff is not able to answer, then we do sometimes call up the...
I'll offer the applicant an opportunity if there's anything that you want to add based on the questions and comments that you've heard so far, but don't feel that you need to.
No comments.
Okay, thank you. So bring it back to the commission.
One additional question to staff. Is staff comfortable that you do not need to bring approach Public Works around whether or not the observed turnouts are sufficient?
Based on my observance of this road, I'm comfortable with that.
I'll just mention that while this is a big project, it does seem well-planned. And I will say it is quite unusual to have a cannabis project of this size come before us without members of the public asking concerned questions. So from all that I can tell, this applicant is doing a great job and will be a credit to the industry and the community.
Call for a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion, just finding the, yes, I would move that we adopt the resolution which finds that we have considered the environmental impact report prepared for this project and find that the proposed project complies with the general plan and zoning ordinance, and that we approve the special permits, zoning clearance certificates, and conditional use permit, subject to the recommended conditions of approval, but with the one change as discussed, that we will remove condition A15 concerning the required pullout on the access road. Yes, that's my motion for Humboldt Heritage Farm Management.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion, Commissioner Levy, second by Commissioner O'Neill. I think we'll, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Levy,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner McFarland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd also like to commend staff, applicant and consultants, and members of the public that did speak on a nice presentation and a well-thought-out project. Thank you. So that is the last item on public hearings tonight. Before we go to report from planner, could we just maybe take a break to the top of the hour? Thank you. We'll adjourn, we'll take a break and reconvene at 7. Okay, we'll come back together for item H on our agenda, report from planner. We have 2 items this evening, and the first one is Cooks Valley Special Events from the annual report of operations, and Director Ford. It's to you.
Thank you. Steve Lazar is going to present this tonight.
Thanks, and I am sharing a screen. I have a small presentation to present. So, Steve Lazar, been working with the applicant. There's 2 applicants, but tonight we're going to be talking about the Mateel Community Center. This is a review of a report on last year's events. They have a 5-year use permit that runs from 2023 through 2027. It was renewed by your commission last year. This is the staff report for it was brought forward with the Northern Nights permit. They operate in much the same fashion and in the same location, and we presented them both for renewal and some slight tweaks last year. But we're just going to focus on the Mateel tonight. Unlike Northern Nights, Mateel are somewhat new. They're returning to the site, but are sort of getting their feet under them as far as reusing the Cooks Valley site. And so the monitoring to the commission is intended to give the commission a chance to see how they're doing with the events. This is a vicinity map just to re-familiarize the commission with the area. In red is the Benbow Recreation Area, purple is Richardson Grove, and then yellow, and on the right side of the screen is the area where the County Line Ranch is. Getting a little closer in here, we have County Line Ranch in yellow, The Cooks Valley Campground, the Bowman property sometimes gets used and sometimes doesn't get used. With Northern Nights, it's used. Last year, it was not used by the Mateel, but under the permit, it is allowed to be used with the permission of Mendocino County. There are other facilities, other properties to the left. The western side of the South Fork of the French's Camp property can be used for parking, and also auxiliary parking can be used on the Richardson Grove RV Park, but last year that was not used. So looking more closely at the Cooks Valley area in yellow, the County Line Ranch, this was the area that was used during the Summer Arts and Music Festival. That was the only event that was held last year. Let's move past that. There are other areas of the property that can be used for camping under the terms of the permit, and you can kind of see that along the river bar there, camping and parking. And then moving into the events themselves. So the permits together allow for basically 4 events. The Mateel permit allows for 2 events, and the Northern Nights permit allow for 2 events. In terms of the events that happened in 2023, Northern Nights was held, and Summer Arts and Music Festival was held, but no additional events were held in the Cooks Valley area. Reggae on the River is planned for this August, and that'll be the first time at Cooks Valley in recent years. But that's not the subject of tonight's conversation. Just wanted to put that on the Commission's radar. So the monitoring report is largely to deal with the Summer Arts and Music Festival that was held on June 24th and June 25th last year. You can see kind of the types of activities that were part of the event, and then also the event mapping kind of coincides with the mapping and approval of the site for use under the use permit. In terms of how it compares to what's allowed under the permit versus what actually emerged, the event occurred over 2 days. There was about 600 people camping, mostly staff and vendors, not about 70 or so people were camping from the public. And then as far as the attendance levels, you can see over the 2 days, they collectively add up to around 3,400 people versus the 5,000, so it didn't exceed the limits under the permit, and parking was roughly half of what was allowed. And you can see it wasn't even on a single day approaching that. That was over 2 days. And then this is just a map showing the kind of the site itself and kind of the breakout under Summer Arts and Music Festival, how it's used. Areas in yellow can be used for camping, parking in blue, and cannabis concessions are allowed on both event types. And then this is the event map for Reggae on the River. That did not happen last year, but that is allowed under the terms of the permit. So we have coordinated with a variety of agencies in bringing this forward tonight. We solicited comments from all the agencies that participated during initial review of the modifications to the permit last year. We didn't hear any concerns raised. I had some conversations with the Environmental Health Department. They'll be a little more active this year, I think, in kind of helping have some boots on the ground for inspection purposes, but they didn't have any issues with the way the events were held last year. And we didn't receive any public comments prior to tonight's meeting. And from speaking with other agencies, everyone had positive feedback. So all we're asking for you to do tonight is to essentially receive the report. It's part of the conditions of approval. And you don't have to approve anything or modify anything. Sometimes we present the report to you along with requests to change the terms of the permit. This year, that's not the case. And this year, I gave you the heads up that they're going to operate Reggae, but Summer Arts is actually going to be held at the Mateel Community Center. So they're only going to be using one of the 2 allowed events. So that's it for our report, but we're open to answering any questions, and the representatives from the Mateel are certainly here, and I think the landowner for County Line Ranch is also available if there's any specific questions about the property.
To the,
Commissioner Karazi?
Thank you. To the staff, thank you for this report. I think my one thoughts go towards managing the parking load and the amount of vehicle traffic that happens to these events. I'm certainly not making comments regarding the permits for this year. But I think I did notice that there were items saying that incentives would be provided to encourage carpooling. I think I would like to see something more descriptive and maybe a bit more proactive than just sort of a vague statement of incentives. And I would also, the use of shuttles is fantastic. I think it would be great to see ways to encourage methods of getting there other than specifically by car. I know car is going to be the dominant mode of travel, but I think there's a lot of room to help encourage other modes of travel to these events.
And I'll just say that it is open-ended, and you're right that there are a variety of ways to do that. And it was our expectation that it was actually a mitigation measure in the environmental document last year. So there's a variety of different things to be done in service of reducing vehicle miles traveled, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and there's certainly a lot of creative ways to do that. So I think the Mateel has taken that to heart, and they're trying, but it was sort of a first attempt, a first generation of that, and that's what you saw in the feedback in the report. So appreciate the feedback.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lazar. Just want to commend the Mateel on a really thorough and well-done report on last year's summer arts. I thought that all looks really good. I just really had a small question as I see your report about the attendance, which I know is a little lower than expected, but I'm assuming, my understanding is that the 5,000 attendance limit for summer arts would be like each day, and that we wouldn't count the same people. Like if 2,000 people, 200, come one day and the same people mostly come back the next day, that's not 4,000. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so just because I saw you adding up the numbers of the 2-day attendance, and it looked like that could have given the impression that if they were at full capacity, it would have exceeded the permit. So I just wanted to sort of call that out.
You are correct that it is per day, and it will be the same 5,000 or a totally different 5,000, but
Right.
that's the carrying capacity. So it was a little misleading in the way I presented it, but good
Sure.
catch.
Director Ford?
Yeah, it would be appropriate to take public comment.
Okay,
All right.
and happy to do so. Except I can't really see the screen right now, so, but anybody in the audience would like to address the commission or comment, you're welcome to do so. Seeing none, okay, and then on Zoom? Any comments? And I don't see any there either. So I'll close public comment. And thank you for the report. It was an excellent document. I echo Mr. Levy's comments. I really appreciate the way you formatted and the thoroughness of the document, the fact that you went through each and every condition of approval that we set out for you last year. And I can tell by the way that your response to the annual review was put together that I can imagine your events are just as well organized. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And our next item under report from Planner Director Ford is analysis of wells.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Skavdal.
Just want to say thanks for bringing back reggae this summer.
Yeah. There you go.
See you all there. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
We just wanted to make the commission aware of a slight change that's occurred, excuse me, in how wells are being reviewed. There have been a couple of different lawsuits outside of Humboldt County. that tend to cause us to want to be more conservative and treat wells as potentially discretionary, which would mean that they'd be subject to CEQA. And there is another set of laws related to public trust doctrine. And if wells are taking water that would affect the public trust, which would be surface waters, navigable waterways, then a finding needs to be made that the wells are not damaging the public trust. So under the current circumstances, all wells, whether it be a residential well, an ag well, a well for cannabis, they're all being evaluated for CEQA compliance and also for public trust. Our overall approach is very similar to what was done, has been traditionally done with respect to the cannabis wells, looking at proximity to a stream course, looking to see if it's likely to pull water out of an underflow of a surface flow, because that's really where the public trust issue would come in. And so we have been doing that as part of the issuance of well permits. And then you will also see in the resolutions that you look at for discretionary projects that there will be a finding on public trust resources, and that'll also be addressed in CEQA as well. So I just wanted you to be aware of another review, that's going on. Just that many of them you won't see, but there will be circumstances like tonight. There were a couple of projects involving wells where that analysis was done. Be happy to answer any questions on that.
I've done quite a few wells, and I'm always curious when I see these, that how productive they are, but it would be nice if there was sort of like a cover sheet and that each one is treated exactly the same. I mean, they may have all of the same information in there, but if there's staff that aren't really familiar, they might miss something. I'm also, and I don't know if it's covered by the cases that you're talking about, it doesn't sound like it, but it's proximity to other domestic wells, or could be commercial also, but primarily domestic, and that's come up a few times where you could be pulling water from the same vein as your neighbor, and they're already impacted by water shortages, and then all of a sudden here comes this commercial enterprise that's going to be taking water away from them, and so that's a concern to me. And that's why I always try to encourage even catchment, because you don't know when your well might go dry either. There could be a geological event and that's happened to wells that I've supervised where they're there today and gone tomorrow just from an earthquake. So it's good to have that backup, but also to not impact your neighbors. But it would just be nice if it showed a summary, and I don't know if you're doing, are you saying they're categorically excluded, or are you saying there's no impacts? You're going to go through a checklist and an environmental checklist. So if that was at the beginning of the report and it showed the gallons per minute, the elevation, the depth of the well, some of the stuff, so that everyone's providing the same information to staff, and then you're doing, your evaluation of whether it's hydrologically connected or if there's impacts to habitat, neighboring wells, or I know just reading the report I pulled out of the last project that we approved in Nakoma, it has all the information in there, but you've got to look for it, and I think it'd be nice if it just had a cover sheet that hit those points.
Well, we receive your comments received. We do try to put that in as a separate header in terms of water use. And many of the things, if not all the things that you identify, we try to list out.
Right. I'm just saying consistently that, you know what I mean? So each staff and each of us see the same thing.
I completely hear that, absolutely. And then one of the things, just in response to your comment, I do want to respond to is that we also evaluate wells in relationship to the governor's executive order, which does require that we look to see if it impacts adjacent wells or springs. And then also, not so much for us, this is primarily a Central Valley issue, but that the well doesn't result in subsidence of the land.
So one of the questions I have, Director Ford, is I know we're trying to evaluate the connectivity of the wells to surface water and the basins, but one of the other things we're doing is we're often requiring water storage capacity, and we're requiring that capacity based on sometimes well output, and I don't see that we're actually getting good data on the capacity of the well. So we're often relying on the well driller's report, and in all deference to well drillers, their job is to drill a hole in the ground and find water, and their analysis of actual capacity of the well is very brief, maybe a 2 or 3 hour pump test while they're out on site. And there are standards for well capacity analysis, drawdown, and recovery rates, and generally require a 24-hour minimum pump down and recovery. And I hate to put in just like one more thing on these projects, but I think it would be good for the applicant to actually know the actual capacity of their wells, and for us to base storage on a more scientific analysis of the well drawdown and actual pumping capacity when we're setting storage requirements. And I think CDF is often struggling with that same kind of question and being very conservative on the storage requirement because we don't actually know well capacity. So I don't know if that's something that we could look into and see if there's some standards or something that perhaps environmental health could look into, or that we could get to help us
That's
know
exactly
actual well capacity.
what I totally 100% agree, because my experience with wells is that I don't know how we have so many great wells associated with these projects, because I've probably been involved with, over 20 drillings or more, and never are they consistently great producers. So, maybe it's because we are doing all those tests that that you're discussing, and to find out what the real capacity is. So that's why I'm always hesitant when I see, oh, you're going to do a well, that sounds really great, but why are you getting all these great wells in locations where I haven't seen that much water? So I agree. Like you said, it's expensive. It's very expensive to drill wells, and you might drill 5 and maybe get one so-so well out of 5. So it is a big cost, but when you're relying on that well, that's 100% of that project's needs to have water. So it's not a small thing to ask that you show that you have the capacity to provide that, or you do catchment to compensate for that shortage of water.
I appreciate the comments. It will help us navigate some of the conversations that are going on, because we recognize there is a need to revisit many of the standards and the permitting requirements that we currently have.
Okay, excuse me. Go ahead.
I support your comments on the individual assessments of the wells, but I'm wondering, is there any movement to do like a watershed approach look at it? I guess, or maybe by sub-watershed, or, drainage pattern, or something that, I understand there's the executive order to see if this new well or this existing well and the increased take will impact another well, but I'm just thinking for the overall watershed approach, is there any effort?
So we did have an intent to do that, and we were going to use grant money that we received from the Department of Cannabis Control. We had set aside $3.1 million to at least start that work. In all honesty, the Department of Cannabis Control should not have issued that grant to us, because it didn't directly result in the movement of cannabis provisional license holders from a provisional status to an annual status. And so that money's not available to us to do that work. So while, yep, it's a great idea, we're looking for money to be able to accomplish that right now.
Wouldn't that be really difficult, though, to,
It's an incredibly complicated issue. It's incredibly difficult. Sonoma County just did it, and they're in litigation right now.
you can go from here to there, and there's gonna be a completely different.
Yeah.
And you're in a big, like right by the Klamath River, you think, oh, there's gonna be all kinds of water, and then there's none. Can you speak closer to the mic, please?
Yeah.
So it just is so different.
Humboldt County has such varied geology that it is difficult. What we would like to at least get to a place is that we can identify areas that we know are extremely sensitive in terms of public trust resources, and in terms of providing water to streams, in terms of habitat, and so kind of start to establish some performance standards around that. But that does take a lot of study to even begin to get to that point.
And then you're dealing with climate change and, droughts, things that, can change the conditions radically from year to year.
So backing up a second, the 3.1 was rescinded?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And so, and following up on O'Neill's comments, so maybe like a sub-basin look, not a complete watershed. So I guess my question is, does the county need help finding a source of funds, or is someone actively pursuing this effort?
Both.
Okay.
But in the meantime, your thought is to try to identify the impacted watersheds for some sort of
Well,
focus study, or?
I mean, we're really in a place right now where we're just trying to use the best understanding that we've had. One of the things that cannabis has done is it's taught us a little bit about, wells and proximity to streams and things where we're likely to be tapping into surface water or connected surface water. And so the first kind of screening, if you will, is to try to stay out of those areas. And then when it gets into true groundwater, and this is where I think Commissioner O'Neill is struggling a little bit, is true groundwater that's in a fractured rock environment. It's completely unregulated and completely unstable. And so, when wells are put into fractured rock environments, they don't have public trust issues, but they're probably not real sustainable. So people probably look for things that are a little closer to what could impact public trust resources. So we're constantly balancing that.
Is treatment required on any of these wells?
We do not have water quality standards within the county right now.
So from a health standpoint, because I don't know enough about cannabis, I know like you can contaminate lettuce or whatever. So we don't worry about that?
We worry about protecting the resource and the access to the resource. So it's really about protecting the borehole.
What happens after that? Is somebody else's concern?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to ask a follow-up question. I just was curious, you mentioned Sonoma County having done something and then that entailed litigation. Can you elaborate? What exactly did Sonoma do?
They developed a well ordinance that tried to identify areas with setbacks, where wells could be safely drilled and where they required further review. And they've been challenged on that.
I see. Okay. And I just want to mention that, we've talked a lot in the past about how cannabis was having to meet a standard for protecting water quantity for wells in particular that was not required of all the other wells, whether it be for domestic or agriculture, and that I think that always struck me and many of us as a bit unfair, actually. Everybody was sort of blaming cannabis for streams drying up when their water supply was more tightly regulated than most others. So I do think it's probably a good thing, although I know it will burden some individual projects to have to meet those same standards for other wells. Sorry, I had one other thought that escaped me, but I just wanted to mention one other thing, which is that, and this came up not long ago when we reviewed the watershed cap report, and I'll just say it again. I know how difficult it is to do watershed-wide or basin-wide stream flow analysis, water resource analysis, but at the very least, I would encourage you, if you haven't done so, to reach out to some of the nonprofits that have been doing that sort of stream flow monitoring work and watershed analysis, because there has been some good work done in this county. Cal Trout has done some great studies. Sanctuary Forest and Salmonid Restoration Federation, as well as Trout Unlimited, I believe, have all done stream flow studies in the county that could have some bearing on the data you're trying to. And the tribes. Yes, good point. Thank you. Those are just the ones that I'm personally familiar with, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the report. Do we have any other questions for Director Ford? All right,
So
thank
is there
you.
going to be a follow-up on this, or is this it?
This is very much a work in progress, and I'm sure we will revisit it.
Okay.
Yeah, keep us appraised.
I think it's really the most important thing about what we do is, the water resources impacts.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this report to us.
Any matters amongst planning commissioners for discussion this evening? Hearing none? Oh, got one, Director?
Just a quick question to staff clarifying the meeting schedule for this month. Do we have one on the third Thursday in addition to the 27th?
No, we've got a meeting on the 27th and then the 18th. Then July 18th, right. We didn't think you wanted to be here on July 4th.
Right, so where the 18th is our,
It'll be kind of a hybrid combined meeting.
Okay.
It'll have current and long-range planning
okay,
items on it.
and then the 27th is,
Is that?
when are we taking up the tiny homes?
Isn't that the
again?
June
The
27th?
June 27th is the tiny home village.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Just curious will there be anything else, or is that the only item for
I
the 27th?
think that's the only item on there. Yeah.
There is one more project.
Oh, okay, great. I have learned that I may have a conflict that would keep me from attending on the 27th. I'm working to avoid that. I will be in touch with Laura, but I certainly would hate to miss that meeting, but I'll just want to put it out there that it's possible.
And to confirm, there's no meeting on the 20th of June.
That is correct.
Okay.
The 19th is a holiday, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you all. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.